The dining room was warm and golden, filled with laughter that didn't quite reach the heart. The chandelier above shimmered like captured sunlight, scattering reflections across polished silverware and crystal glasses. Everything about my mother's house was immaculate. The table settings, the decor, the forced smiles. It was supposed to be a peaceful Sunday dinner. Family time, she called it. But in this family, every conversation was a performance, and every compliment carried a hidden sting. I took my seat quietly at the far end of the long oak table. My sister Lena was already there, looking radiant in her designer dress, her laughter loud and effortless. She had always been the golden child, the one who made my mother proud. I had stopped competing years ago, content to exist quietly in their shadow. Still, a small part of me hoped that maybe tonight would be different. The conversation flowed from vacation plans to gossip, and then, inevitably, to appearances. Lena's eyes suddenly dropped to my neck, to the ruby and gold necklace that rested just above my collarbone. I had worn it because it made me feel close to my grandmother. It was old, delicate, and imperfect, but it held the kind of beauty that money could never buy. Lena tilted her head, her lips curving into a sly smile. "Amara," she said sweetly, "that's quite a necklace. Where did you get it? A flea market?" The room chuckled. My father shifted awkwardly but said nothing. I smiled faintly. "It belonged to Grandma," I said softly. "It's very special to me." "Oh, how sentimental," she laughed, swirling her wine. "I mean, it's cute. Pretending that's real gold. It's probably worth what, a few dollars? You could have at least gotten something believable." Her words stung sharper than I expected. My fingers instinctively brushed the necklace as if to protect it. But before I could respond, another voice joined in. Colder, sharper. My mother. Catherine Collins never needed to raise her voice to cut someone down. Her words did the slicing for her. She looked up from her plate, her expression elegant and amused. "Oh, Lena, let her have her little fantasy. It matches her, pretending to be something she's not." Laughter echoed around the table again, a cruel symphony that made my chest tighten. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the chair and vanish from their perfect little world. But I didn't cry. I couldn't. Not in front of them. I forced a small, polite smile. "You're right, Mother," I whispered. "It matches me perfectly." The air shifted for a second, as if she hadn't expected me to agree, but she only smirked, satisfied, and went back to her plate. The rest of the dinner blurred. The taste of food vanished, replaced by the bitter weight of humiliation. Their laughter became distant, hollow echoes in my head. I stared down at my plate, pretending to eat, while the ruby at my throat seemed to burn hotter with every passing second, as if it too felt my shame. When dinner finally ended, I stood quietly, thanking my mother for the meal. She gave a faint nod, distant, dismissive. Lena hugged me at the door, the way one hugs a stranger they don't care to know. "Don't take it personally, sis," she said with that same cruel grin. "We're just teasing." I smiled again. "Of course," I said softly. "Just teasing." The night air outside was cool, but I was burning on the inside. My car keys trembled in my hand as I climbed in and shut the door. For a moment I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, watching the house fade in my rearview mirror. A single tear escaped, not from weakness, but release. Then I wiped it away. When I got home, I placed the necklace back into its velvet box. The rubies glowed faintly under the lamp, their red hue deep and defiant. I traced the pattern of gold, remembering my grandmother's voice telling me it was made for a woman with quiet strength. Maybe she had known I'd need it one day. As I looked at my reflection in the mirror, something inside me shifted. My eyes, usually soft and uncertain, were steady, cold with clarity. The laughter from dinner still echoed in my head, but it no longer hurt the same way. It was fuel now. Pure, clean, burning fuel. I whispered to my reflection, "You want to see fake? I'll show you real." And for the first time that night I smiled, not from pain, not from pride, but from purpose. Morning sunlight streamed through my apartment windows, soft and golden, touching everything it met, except me. I sat by the window, a cup of untouched coffee cooling beside my hand, staring at the city below. The world moved on as if last night's humiliation had never happened, but I remembered every word, every laugh, every flicker of mockery that danced across my sister's face. Fake jewelry. Pretending to be something she's not. The words replayed in my mind like a broken record, cruel and sharp, but beneath that ache, something new had started to grow, quiet, controlled, and fierce. I opened the velvet box once more. The necklace gleamed softly, defiant in its beauty. My grandmother's heirloom, a piece of history that carried both love and legacy. My mother saw only metal, my sister saw imitation. But I saw a story, one rooted in strength, migration, survival, and art. They had no idea who I had become. For years they believed I was a simple museum employee, someone ordinary, someone forgettable. What they didn't know was that I had built something beyond their comprehension, a quiet empire of my own. After leaving home, I had poured every ounce of my pain into my work. I started small, researching forgotten artifacts, restoring damaged heritage pieces, assisting collectors who couldn't afford large institutions. My passion caught the attention of a foundation director who believed in preservation, not prestige. He became my mentor, and eventually, I became his silent partner. The world of art and history opened to me, not for wealth, but for meaning. While my mother collected jewels to show off her success, I collected legacies to protect them. And the necklace, the one they laughed at, was the very reason I'd started. I remembered the day I discovered its true worth. 2 years ago, I had taken it to a gemologist in Paris, one of the finest in the field. He studied it under the microscope, adjusting his glasses again and again, before looking at me with disbelief. "Miss Collins," he said in his crisp accent, "do you have any idea what this is?" I shook my head. He smiled, awe in his eyes. "This isn't imitation. It's Burmese ruby, mined from the old Mogok Valley, the kind used for royal commissions in the 1800s. The goldwork is authentic, handcrafted, and remarkably preserved." "This is not jewelry, Miss Collins. It's history." I had stood frozen in that Parisian office, tears welling in my eyes. My grandmother had known. She must have. Since then, I had protected the necklace with my life. I restored it with experts, archived its history, documented every detail. It had become a symbol, a quiet reminder that I didn't need validation to know my worth. But now, perhaps it was time for the world, and my family, to see what they'd mocked. I spent the next week finalizing something I'd been planning for months, a gala event for the Heritage Foundation. Originally, it was to be hosted under the foundation's name, but as I looked at the event proposal on my laptop, I felt a spark of mischief. I deleted the foundation's title, and in bold gold letters, I typed, "Gala Evening, hosted by Ms. Amara Collins." I sat back and smiled, the first genuine smile since that dreadful dinner. This wasn't revenge through cruelty. This was truth through grace. The next few days were a blur of quiet preparations. I coordinated with the museum director, Mr. Hahn, a kind man who treated me with the respect my own family never had. He listened as I described the necklace's history, the significance of its craftsmanship, and the story of my grandmother's courage. When I finished, he simply nodded and said, "It deserves to be seen, Amara, and so do you." Those words stayed with me. At night, I drafted invitations, elegant black cards with embossed gold lettering. No dramatic words, no hint of spite. Just a simple, formal invite to an exclusive cultural gala. I included my family's names at the top of the list. My heart beat faster as I sealed each envelope. This wasn't about shaming them. It was about showing them the truth, who I had become when they weren't looking. A quiet transformation. Not loud, not vengeful, just undeniable. The following morning, I stood before my mirror again, holding the necklace. Its rubies caught the light and threw it back in shades of scarlet and gold. Proud, alive, regal. I fastened it around my neck slowly, meeting my reflection's gaze. The woman staring back wasn't the same one who sat in silence at that dinner table. Her eyes were calm, her posture steady, her silence powerful. I whispered softly, "They saw a fool. Let them meet the truth." The city outside roared to life. Cars honked, people hurried, the world kept moving. And so did I. Somewhere between the laughter that had once broken me and the silence I now carried, I found something far more powerful. Not revenge, not pride, but dignity, wrapped in gold and ruby, burning quietly beneath my skin. That night, as I looked over the guest list, I paused on two names, Catherine Collins and Lena Collins. I couldn't help the small smile that tugged at my lips. Let's see, I murmured, how fake looks under museum lights. The morning air carried the scent of jasmine and rain, washing the world in calm. It was the kind of morning that looked peaceful on the outside, the kind that hides storms beneath the surface. I stood by my window, sipping warm tea, watching the city stretch awake. On my desk lay a small, shining stack of black and gold envelopes. Each one bore my name, Ms. Amara Collins, embossed in raised gold letters. The invitations were finally ready. I picked one up, feeling its smooth weight in my hand. The paper smelled faintly of fresh ink and quiet revenge. For a moment, I imagined their faces when they received it. My mother's skeptical arch of the eyebrow, Lena's mocking laugh. A gala, hosted by Amara? They would think it was a mistake, or maybe some childish attempt at attention. I almost smiled at the thought. But this time, I wasn't trying to impress them. This wasn't about proving my worth. It was about reclaiming it, with elegance and silence. I slipped the invitations into the mailbox myself. Each soft click of the metal lid sounded like a step closer to something I'd been waiting my entire life for. Acknowledgement, not from them, but from myself. 2 days later, my phone rang. The screen flashed Lena. I answered, keeping my voice light. Hey, Lena. Her tone dripped amusement. Amara, darling, I just got this invitation, a gala hosted by you at the City Museum of Fine Arts. Is this a joke, or did someone in marketing confuse your name with the caterers? I laughed softly, unbothered. No confusion, it's real. I hope you'll come. Black tie, and be on time. There was silence on the other end, brief, brittle, then a scoff. Right, sure, Amara, we'll be there. When the call ended, I could almost see her rolling her eyes as she told Mother. I didn't care. Let them come curious, come mocking. They'd still come. And that was enough. The week that followed passed like a dream made of steel and silk. I spent hours coordinating with the museum staff, checking lighting angles, reviewing display cases, and finalizing the evening program. Every detail mattered, not because of vanity, but because this moment represented everything they'd dismissed in me. I walked through the grand marble halls of the City Museum, the scent of polished stone and history surrounding me. I could almost hear echoes of the past, whispers of artists and collectors who had poured their souls into their work. One of the museum curators, Mr. Hahn, approached me with a soft smile. Everything is ready, Miss Collins. Your grandmother's necklace will be the centerpiece, displayed under controlled lighting and glass. Its story will be told with honor. Thank you, I said quietly. That means more than you know. He smiled knowingly. Some truths don't need to be shouted. They just need to be seen. I nodded, holding back emotion. That one sentence captured everything I'd been feeling. The night of the gala arrived like a slow sunrise. Golden, inevitable, breathtaking. By evening, the museum glowed from within, its towering columns lit by warm lights that danced across the marble steps. Elegant guests began to arrive, their laughter and conversation floating through the night air. The sound of a string quartet filled the entrance, soft and sophisticated. I stood near the entrance in a gown of deep burgundy silk, a color that caught the light the same way the rubies in my necklace did. The same necklace rested against my skin, gleaming like a quiet promise. Guests approached with kind smiles and warm words. And Miss Collins, your work is remarkable, they said. We've heard so much about your foundation. Each compliment felt surreal. For years I had worked in silence, building something meaningful without ever demanding recognition. And now, the world was finally seeing it, not through gossip or wealth, but through truth. Then they arrived. I saw them before they saw me. My mother and sister, stepping out of their car, shimmering in expensive fabrics and cold pride. Mother's pearls glowed against her neck like armor. Lena's diamond earrings caught the light as she walked, chin high, eyes scanning for me. When their gazes found me at the entrance, they both paused. For a moment, there was disbelief, then confusion, then something else, unease. Amara, my mother said as she approached, You look lovely. Her tone was careful, almost forced. This is quite the venue. I didn't realize you were involved with the museum. I smiled politely. Oh, just a small role, I said. Shall we head inside? Lena's lips curved into a teasing smile. This is impressive, sis. Did you get a sponsorship or something?" "Something like that," I replied lightly. They exchanged a quick glance, the kind that always meant they were trying to understand something beyond them. Inside, the museum glittered like a world reborn. Waiters moved gracefully between guests carrying trays of champagne. Soft classical music filled the air. The atmosphere was one of refinement, grace, and subtle awe. My mother's eyes darted from sculpture to sculpture, impressed despite herself. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Yes," I said. "It is." As the orchestra played, speeches began. The museum director welcoming guests, thanking contributors, and finally, introducing the host of the evening. "Tonight," he said warmly, "we gather not just to celebrate history, but the people who preserve it. And none more so than the woman whose vision made this event possible, Ms. Amara Collins." The room applauded. My mother blinked, stunned. Lena froze mid-sip of champagne. I stepped forward with steady grace, the sound of my heels echoing softly across the marble floor. I could feel their eyes burning into me. Disbelief, confusion, maybe even shame. But I didn't look at them. I looked at the crowd, at the art, at the truth I had built. "Thank you for being here," I began, my voice calm but strong. "Tonight's gala is not just about beauty. It's about legacy. About the things we inherit not in wealth, but in spirit." I paused, letting the words sink in. Sometimes what looks ordinary carries the most extraordinary stories, if only we look closely enough. The crowd applauded softly, unaware that the words were a blade dipped in velvet. As I stepped down from the stage, the lights dimmed. The director's voice filled the room again, and now, the highlight of tonight's exhibition, a priceless heritage piece, donated by our host, a treasure of immense historical and artistic value. I felt my pulse quicken. This was it. The curtains began to draw back, revealing a single glass case in the center of the hall. Even from a distance, I could see the familiar glimmer of rubies and gold. My mother and sister followed the crowd toward it, curiosity pulling them closer. I stayed behind, watching as they leaned in, eyes widening, lips parting in disbelief. The lights dimmed until the hall fell into a reverent hush. The soft hum of the orchestra faded into silence, replaced by the quiet anticipation of 100 eyes fixed on the exhibit. And there, in the center of the grand marble room, under a single golden spotlight, stood a glass display case. Inside it, my grandmother's necklace. The same one that, just a week ago, my family had mocked as fake. The rubies burned like captured fire, their red depths alive under the light. The gold filigree shimmered with quiet dignity, each detail whispering stories of time, heritage, and love. It was breathtaking and utterly undeniable. The museum director's voice carried across the hall, deep and solemn. "This exceptional piece, donated by Miss Amara Collins, is an early 19th century Burmese ruby and gold necklace, authenticated and preserved through years of careful restoration. Its estimated value stands at $2.8 million. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Guests leaned forward, whispering in awe. The flashes of cameras burst like lightning as journalists scribbled notes. But I wasn't looking at them. My gaze was fixed on my mother and sister, frozen a few feet from the display, their faces pale and wordless. Lena's champagne glass trembled in her hand. She looked from the necklace to me and back again, disbelief flickering across her face like static. "No," she whispered. "That can't be the same necklace." Mother's voice was barely audible. "It's impossible. That's not—" The words died on her tongue. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the glass case, her pearls suddenly dull in comparison. I stepped forward slowly, my heels clicking softly against the marble, each sound deliberate, steady, calm. The crowd's attention turned toward me, but I wasn't performing. I was simply being seen. I stopped beside them, the light from the display spilling across my gown. For a long moment, I said nothing. I wanted the silence to do the talking. Finally, I turned my head slightly, my voice low but clear enough for them to hear. "You said it matched me," I murmured. "I suppose you were right. It reflects who I've become." Lena's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked small, a child caught in her own cruelty. My mother, usually so composed, blinked rapidly as if trying to process what she was seeing. Her hand clutched at her pearls like a lifeline. "Amara," she said at last, her tone wavering between shock and regret. "Why didn't you tell us?" I met her gaze steadily. "Would you have listened if I did?" The question hung between us like smoke. She didn't answer. She didn't have to, because we both knew the truth. They had laughed at what they never took time to understand. They had mocked what they never cared to value. And now the world was applauding it. The museum director gestured to me. "Miss Collins, would you like to say a few words about your donation?" I hesitated for just a heartbeat, then nodded and walked up to the podium. The audience turned toward me, the same society that had once dismissed me as invisible. I took a deep breath, letting my voice find its calm rhythm. "This necklace," I began, "belonged to my grandmother. She carried it across borders, through loss, through years of silence. It's more than gold and rubies. It's courage, memory, and love preserved in form. For years, it sat in a small box, ignored, underestimated, misunderstood. But its worth was never in question. It was only unseen." My eyes swept across the crowd, landing briefly on my mother and sister. "And sometimes," I continued softly, "the same can be said of people." A murmur moved through the room. Some people smiled, others nodded. I saw the flicker of understanding in their faces. I smiled faintly. Thank you for giving history and truth a place to shine. Applause filled the hall, warm and genuine, but I barely heard it. My heart was somewhere else, calm, light, free. After the speeches, guests gathered around to congratulate me. "Such poise," one said. "Incredible story," said another. "Your grandmother would be proud." And maybe, I thought, she was. Across the room, my mother stood silently by the display. Her posture wasn't proud anymore. It was softened, humbled. When our eyes met, she gave a faint, hesitant smile. "Amara," she said, her voice low, almost fragile. "It's magnificent. You're magnificent." I held her gaze for a moment, then simply said, "Thank you." No bitterness. No resentment. Just truth. Lena, however, couldn't speak. Her confidence had cracked. She stared at the necklace like it was a mirror, one that reflected every cruel thing she had ever said. When she finally looked at me, her eyes were wet. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I know," I said softly. "That's what made it easy to forgive you." Her lip trembled. "You're not angry?" I shook my head. "No, because anger would mean I still need your approval. And I don't." Her silence was the truest apology I could have asked for. Later that night, I slipped outside onto the museum balcony. The city spread before me, glittering like scattered jewels beneath a velvet sky. The air was cool and the faint sound of violins drifted through the open doors behind me. I took off the necklace, and held it in my hand. The rubies gleamed faintly in the moonlight, their glow soft and peaceful now. For the first time, I didn't see it as a weapon or proof of worth. It was simply what it had always been, a legacy of love. I smiled to myself, whispering into the night, "You were right, Grandma. Quiet strength outlasts everything." As I stood there, a gentle sense of closure settled over me. I didn't need their validation, their applause, or their envy. I had turned their laughter into silence, and silence into power. I placed the necklace back inside its box, the same one that had once sat forgotten on my dresser, and closed it softly. Tomorrow it would stay in the museum, under glass, where the world could see its beauty. But tonight, I carried something far more precious home with me: peace. Epilogue. Weeks later, the museum exhibit drew national attention. Reporters called it the Jewel of Heritage. The story of the necklace, and the woman who donated it, became a quiet sensation. My mother never mocked me again. Lena apologized the only way she could, through actions, not words. Sometimes when I visit the museum, I watch strangers admire the necklace through the glass. They don't know the dinner table, the laughter, or the tears. They only see what it is, something beautiful, rare, and timeless. And I smile because that's exactly how I want it.